So, when did counseling stop being about problem solving? Well, not anymore. Introducing solution-focused counseling with the unlicensed counselor. And now, here's your host, Steve Moak.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of The Unlicensed Counselor. My name is Steve Moak. I am the Unlicensed Counselor, and I'm grateful to be here, as I always say. I'm chuckling a little bit as we kick it off in the studio. Like I'm telling you, I wish I could give you a sneak peek into the studio here before we get talking with Robin and Daniel, and I always have some interesting conversation. But first, the weekly weather report from Scottsdale, Arizona. I don't know what degree perfect is, but it is darn close to it. Took my daughter out for a hike. It is sunny with just that warm but cool at the same time. I've said this a million times on the pod too. It's just a perfect time to be out here. We got the golf tournament coming up. We got Barrett Jackson. We've got we just got fun stuff. And a great time to be alive. And that's why I always like to start my show saying I'm just grateful. I am grateful for all that has happened, that has brought me to this point. So I don't care. I'm just going to keep saying it every single time. But I got some fun stuff I want to talk about today that's been on my mind as usual too, and we were just talking about it pre-show. I want to talk about re-engaging with kind of some long-lost friends or maybe friends that you have lost touch with. And this, you could also kind of map this to family members as well too. But really, I'm thinking when I'm going to be talking today about friends. I've got buddies from college. I've got buddies that maybe you used to party with or run around with from different stages of life. And for a lot of reasons, of which we will get into, I've been trying to make an effort to kind of reconnect with some folks, right? These are people who've been my friends for years or decades in some cases, and I've just let those relationships drift off. And I'll get into why it's happened, but also really a kind of step-by-step on how we can maybe bring some of these friendships back together. And in my experience, it can be pretty rewarding to kind of reconnect some of these friendships as well. It might feel a little daunting, a little creepy, or a little like, I don't know if I want to do this. But I found people to be really receptive. And I found that sometimes the relationship can be even a little bit deeper, a little more meaningful as a friend, kind of circling back after maybe some time apart. And now we're a little bit older, a little bit wiser, a little different stage of life. So hopefully this episode can encourage those of us who've maybe drifted away. And look, it's so easy to happen. When you get a wife and kids and family and job and stress, I mean, man, there's only so much bandwidth we have. But we'll get into to some of the specifics as we progress into the show. But before we do that, I want to say, as always, a big thank you to our friends over at ShareTech. ShareTech is now the leader in at-home drug and alcohol screening. Again, this test is performed by a lab. It is sent directly to your home. It is the most convenient, discreet test that you can take on the market. Does not require any observed collection, meaning eyes on streams, because of the safeguards that they have in place using a patented process. So if you need the most accurate report for drugs and alcohol and the levels of drugs and alcohol in you or your loved one's systems, be sure to visit our friends at ShareTech. That's ShareTek, and go and order that test, and they're going to ship it right to your front door. And of course, the other project that I'm working on that I just love what we're doing is the Stop Starts Here. Go to the stopstartshere.org. This is a youth drug abuse prevention campaign that I co-founded with a group of individuals. Think This Is Your Brain on Drugs meets 2024 meets social media. We are a social media company. We are original content. It is raw. It is creative. It is bold. We are going to saturate the market with youth drug prevention messaging. Look, right now, 7 of 10 pills that you come across that you buy on the street are counterfeit. What does that mean? That means that they are not what you think that you're buying. It is not a Xanax, right? It is not a Vicodin. It is cut with fentanyl, amongst other things as well, too. 7 out of 10. If you were playing Russian roulette, do you think that you would win in that game if I put 10 pills right out of here and said pick the 3 that are not? I guarantee you would not be able to do that. So this is really important work that we're doing. So again, go to the stopstartshere.org, give us a follow, and stay up to date with kind of the messaging. And please like and share the content if you can. And And last but not least, for kind of shameless self-promotion, if you can, like some of my content, some of my posts on Instagram, on Facebook, share it, send these podcast episodes to other folks that you may think are relevant, especially the one today. We're going to be talking about reconnecting with old friends. Maybe that's a way that you can start the reconnecting process as well. Cost you nothing and really helps, a growing podcast like this kind of continue to get new eyes and ears, which we really appreciate. So, okay, like I said, kind of re-engaging with a long-lost friend has been on my mind. When I was doing show prep for this, I was thinking a lot of my fraternity brothers, right? I went to the school at the University of Colorado up in Boulder. Anywhere a good pot-smoking drunk would want to go at the time, and this was 1998. I was 19 years old. I got into some beautiful colleges like Pepperdine and some other places when, in retrospect, probably should have had it over that way instead of unleash me on the hounds. Up in Boulder, Colorado. But, I did the pledge and fraternity thing. It was a blur. It was a blackout. You do kind of form this, brotherhood. You get these, tight bonds and friendships that really have stood the test of time. And there's actually a handful of us now out of, I think my pledge house like 15 guys. I think 3 of us are now sober as well, too, and have been for quite some time. When you go through a lot of that stuff, drinking and drugs is, obviously a large part of that. And some of us were able to manage that and some of us were able to not. I would say there's probably at least another 3 who are probably borderline within that group of maybe teetering on that edge of problem use, whether that was drugs or alcohol as well, too. But that's for everybody else to find out on their own and not for me to pass judgment on. So, as we go through life, in the 20s, we spent a lot of time. I had some friends over in California. We'd go, hang out on the beach in Hermosa and Manhattan and run around and do all those things. And then slowly but surely, people start to get married. People start to have kids. Life just starts to get a little more serious and starts to happen, right? People kind of geographically disperse across the country. I've even had some friends who moved overseas into Europe and still live over there. And it's just, that kind of natural thing happens, and it's just hard to keep in touch with everybody that you want to keep in touch with because distance and time and responsibilities and all that stuff. And then you layer in kids, and it's just complicated. Now, we did a really good job of staying in touch for a long time. Now, a lot of that time was spent around getting back together and getting drunk and going out and doing different things, or bachelor parties as we would kind of go. But even as we get older, there'd be a little bit less of that. And we still maintained, some friendships via social media and on text, but even after a while, that stuff would start to dissipate. And then when I found, there was a specific point in time, and I think it was 2016, which was the presidential election, right? And this episode isn't about politics, but it is about how politics can kind of impact relationships a touch. And it's not that we didn't like each other all of a sudden because we had different points of view or anything like that. It was just that certain times, certain people on both sides would start posting content that was just kind of inflammatory, and it was frustrating because I don't agree with this, or even the people on the right are saying this and I don't agree with this. And I got to a point personally, and I know, and that's kind of what we were talking about even pre-show here, that other folks have, where it was just like, I'm just going to start unfollowing people, unfriending people, and kind of take my sanity back. Like, I respect whatever your political opinion is over here on the left. I don't like it. Some of it I adamantly disagree with, right? And the same with some of these crazy folks on the right-hand side of things too, where they're just taking things too far, even though I consider myself a Republican. I'm just going, come on, it's too much. That's a dumb way of positioning or talking or debating or, not respecting the other side. And so I kind of actively went through this process. And in fact, the number one thing I did was started by just unfriending, unfollowing people on Facebook and Instagram. I actually ended up deleting my entire Facebook profile. And the only reason I brought it back in the recent years is because of the business ventures that I had. And you have to have kind of some of these Facebook accounts in order to use some of the professional tools that go along with it. But it was just getting to be too much. And it's not that I don't care about those people and that I want to be friends with them. Again, both sides, not singling any one side out. But it was just like, it was frustrating, right? You just like, can we just be friends? Like, would you be saying these things to my face right now? Or would we be having that same type of dialogue? We get behind a screen, we get behind a keyboard, and we just start saying things with impunity and forgetting that there's other people, on the other side of this thing. And I understand it. We've all been guilty of that. So, after kind of the digital breakup, I think it created the divide even more so, right? Of just like, people that I was close with, I'm just going, after a while, it's just like, and elections happen, and then you get one candidate who's in office, and people just go crazy for the next 4 years, and you get another candidate. But after a while, like, I don't care. I mean, I do care about that stuff, but it's like, the way of the world is just flame throwing on both sides. And I'm just going, I miss friendships that don't have to involve conversations around this. I miss the people, having those people in my life, being able to go visit them or pick up the phone and call them and see how they're doing, see how their kids are doing, get together, go play golf, get together. They can have a beer, I'll have some club soda and, a slice of pizza or whatever it is. And so, in the last year, I've been reflecting on this going, okay, you have these thoughts, Steve, but what kind of action are you taking to do something about this, right? Because I do think I'm big on action. That's what a lot of this podcast is really about. And that's why I tend to kind of give step-by-step or break down ideas on solution-focused counseling. I don't know if today's is really on counseling so much, but kind of an action plan to bring these back. I do think it impacts our mental health if you feel lost because you have a friendship that doesn't exist anymore or exists in kind of this minimalist way, and you'd like to bring that back. So I just put together some ideas on, how we could really kind of bring back or reach back out to some of these friends that maybe we haven't talked to in a while, and how we can kind of navigate this process. So the number one thing that I came up with was just let's start reflecting on what the friendship was, right? What was it like? Was it close? Was it supportive? Was it casual? How much time has passed, right? Accept the fact that when you're getting ready to re-engage someone in this process, that time has probably changed that person, right? So maybe the things that were frustrating you at a point in time, maybe they don't feel the same way. And just, this is kind of the pre-contemplation step before we even pick up the phone and do anything, right? It's just kind of setting your mind right. And let's also make sure that our expectations are appropriate when going into this. You may be missing that person, and they may not have thought about you. They may be adamant in whatever belief that they have as to why that friendship may have terminated. They may not be that receptive, right? I have found that most people are, but just be aware that they may not be, and that's a distinct possibility as well. Okay, so you've thought about what the friendship was like. Was it close? Was it supportive? You understand that, okay, maybe not. They may be receptive to this, that they've probably changed in some way, shape, or form. That change could be positive or negative. And then step two is, okay, well, how do I want to do this, right? Do I want to send an email? Do I want to go over social media? Do I want to text them? Do I actually want to pick up the phone and call them, right? And that's kind of up to you on what your comfort level is of being able to do this. For me, I've started out with just some text messages, right? I mean, these, again, when I was doing this was a lot around my fraternity brothers and things like that. It was like, let's just shoot them some text and kind of joke around. And in fact, there was a couple of us on a group text that we had just kind of innocently started talking about baseball. I think it was the Dodgers payroll and something like the Dodgers have spent $1 billion this offseason, and the rest of the Major League Baseball has spent $1 billion. It's wild, actually, when you think about it. But it's like little stuff that, we used to just talk about, in passing, and that kind of broke the ice. Again, I don't mean to be overdramatic, broke the ice, but that just kind of kick-started the conversation over text. And before you know it, we kind of had what felt like an old conversation kind of streaming in again, where we're busting each other's balls and joking around and laughing, and then, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But that even kind of jumped ahead into step number 3, was kind of crafting your initial message. And this was in a group text environment of guys. There was 3 guys that I hadn't really talked to in a while. And it was just a casual and friendly approach. And it was really on a topic that, again, is not political, not controversial. It was baseball, right? A couple dudes joking around about the Dodgers because we like to beat up on my one buddy who lives over in L.A., right? And how the Dodgers are going crazy spending money. And we're over here at the Diamondbacks, and we went to the World Series, not spending a fraction of that, right? So, we were that's how we, and maybe more guys are like that. I'm not going to say all guys are. I'm a little bit more of the old school way where we like to just kind of bust each other's chops and give each other a hard time. That's how we do, especially kind of within that friendship fraternity type of thing. But one of the suggestions I would make, whether you choose that style or not, is let's not be overly dramatic when we kind of reach out to this person, right? Let's keep it friendly. Let's keep it casual. I would also acknowledge the time gap. It's like, hey, it's been a while since we last talked. I was thinking about the college days. I remember that one time when we did right? Keep it light, keep it friendly, but also see if you can express a little genuine interest. It's just like, dude, yeah, I've been thinking, you were on my mind. You just popped up. I just wondering how you've been. It's probably been 7 years since we've spoken. I just, miss hanging out with you, miss talking to you. Hope all is well. Keep it simple. Keep it light. You can use these verbatim if you want, but, find your style, find your voice, find out you want to do it. Again, calling that person or maybe just starting with a text might be an easy way. It also might be the way that you actually do it because, that phone can feel like 1,000,000 pounds sometimes when you have to go do stuff like that. So being able to kind of fire off a quick test. And maybe it's a DM on Instagram or something like that. You figure it out, right? You figure that part out. Next step I had is kind of step 4, mention a shared memory or interest, right? To kind of establish that common ground, make the conversation feel a little bit more natural. Hey, I was just up in Boulder and I drove by the sink and, oh man, you know what? That reminded me of da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right? And it kind of reconnects you. It brings you back to a point in time when you were probably, a little bit closer, find a way to kind of bring it together a little bit. I hate sounding so strategic, but it does require a little bit of this because hopefully that also diffuses any angst that maybe that person or you have felt in whatever, the situation came up that led to kind of the separation, the distance, and maybe there was none of that. Maybe it was just a natural drift. But this leads to my next step, which is apologize if necessary as well too. And we can't be above apologizing, and not some stupid wimpy apology that sounds like an agent or a PR person wrote it for you. If it faded over a disagreement or a misunderstanding, I would kind of lead out as appropriate in the conversation and be like, look, I know I wasn't great at keeping in touch after I moved. I'm sorry. I apologize. This distance is just too much. I'd love to kind of, start chatting again if that's possible. Right. And I've got a couple buddies that I've said something similar to that and acknowledge that I'm not very good at that. And it's one of the things that I'm actively working on as well too, is being better at keeping in touch. Because I have friends who do a good job of keeping in touch with me, and I feel like I don't do a good job at reciprocating that back to them as well too. So I think that apology can kind of go a long way in kind of bridging whatever the gap is as well too, right? Unless it was something really significant, I think that's going to be able to kickstart, a conversation, that relationship back into it again. But again, at every step in this, I'd also be making sure that if this person is receptive to it or not. And if they're not, there's, this may be a relationship that has run its course. I hate to think of it that way because oftentimes these are people that we were very, very close with, but people change, life circumstances change depending on what caused kind of the separation. Maybe the gap is just too big, right? And that's something to keep in mind. But I'd also be, showing some interest in their life. Let's ask some open-ended questions about their life now. I'm big on the open-ended questions in general. I want people to kind of be able to share a little bit about this. So, what have you been up to these days? How's, life? How's work? Have you been on any vacations? Are you dating anyone? How are the kids? What do you got? Was you doing that startup thing? Look into, find something, find some ground, express genuine interest in kind of what this person's doing. Again, The goal is to kind of slowly kind of build into a relationship again. And I think that as you're doing this, let's keep in mind, I know some people respond to I respond to a text right away or close to it when it comes in. As you're trying to rebuild, a relationship, let's make sure that they don't respond and then you leave them hanging or out to dry for a couple days as well, too. And then maybe they go back on guard and it kind of sets you back instead of maybe, continuing to make that progress. So show some interest in what's going on. But at the same time, this is my next step, is just be patient, right? Be patient. Give them some time to respond. They might need a little time to process. They might be dealing with their own life events. God knows I've had enough life events in my life where I've had to check out for 30 days at a time. You know what I'm talking about if you've been listening to this podcast, right? And that is what it is. So give people a little bit of time to warm back up to the idea of the friendship or the conversation, and maybe they're feeling you out. But if they're responding, let's try and keep that momentum going as well, too. I do think some of these things require a little bit of momentum. And if you get it going and then you check out for 5 days and don't get back to that person, that may kill them and slow down kind of the rebuilding process that you've probably made up until this point. The next step I would think is, maybe you can get together, right? Maybe you can get together. If they're in another state, let's just see if you can, set some times to keep the conversation going, right? Love to catch up a little bit further. I would probably say as you're starting these out, maybe you don't need to dive into the entire conversation and the regroup all at once. Let's kind of space this thing out a little bit over time and kind of slowly build back into it. Plus, not nobody, but a lot of times you just don't have an hour for a phone call and things like that. I find that challenging to do, but I'm very good on text, and I'm very good on, hey, if you got 15 minutes, I'm driving in the car somewhere or coming down to the podcast, I'd love to be on the phone talking to somebody to fill that time, kind of set it up so that it works for you, right? But don't force the issue. If you can, try and meet back up in person. I just think that really helps, getting face to face, a little hug, a little dapping them up. You know what I mean? It's just little stuff. Get together, have a beer, right? Watch a game for a few minutes. I think that stuff is important, right? I think it's especially if this person was important enough in your life to kind of make the effort to do this, right? Is to kind of sit down with them face to face if you possibly can. And in fact, in my situation, I propose we all get back up to Boulder and go watch a football game, right? And go and do that. And I have some of my sober buddies along with my friends who are not so sober, and we can all go have a good time and go back to the fraternity and watch whatever the 20-year-olds are doing now, running around like crazy. But it would be fun. Even just the thought of that, would make me happy to be able to do that. I got 2 more points on this, and this one I've kind of been alluding at. Respect their response, right? If they're not interested, right, or if they're giving you all the signs that hey, I think I'm good, or they're not responding, you've got to respect their decision, right? People change, and not every relationship can be rekindled, right? And that's just a matter of fact. So if you are picking up that they are just not responding, let's not force it. You've given it some time. You've, tried genuinely expressing interest in what's going on in their life, and it's just not there. I think it's okay. But now you know, right? Now you know. And now you can kind of move on a little bit. But at least you can put your head on your pillow at night going, look, I cared about it. I made an effort. It didn't work. That is that. Doesn't mean you can't try again maybe down the road, but I think we can probably put that relationship to bed right now. Now, if they are receptive, then I would say try and keep a little momentum behind this as well, and be better at staying in touch through text, through a meetup, through coffee, through whatever. But now that you've kind of built this back up, make sure you're not the person who then kind of flakes out and you put all this effort into kind of rekindling a friendship, and now you're the one who's gone ski, right? So it seems simple. It seems almost silly to kind of, having to bring up an entire podcast episode on this, but I know, and I've talked to many people where it's just and I've even got some high school buddies that kind of came to mind as this as well too, that have moved out of state, that I played basketball with, that, for whatever reason, we're just not in touch anymore. And you see some pictures, or they pop up from time to time. I'm like, oh man, I'd be nice to say hi and, chat or whatever. And, but I haven't done anything about it with some of those friendships. And now I've been finally moving myself towards that because it's one of my goals is to be a better friend. I've got friends in my life who I know are good friends, and they're very good at being good friends. And I want to turn around and start to be a better friend as well, too. So last couple things just to keep in mind as you're doing this. Be sensitive to their life changes, right? They may be going through different things, right? You don't know. You haven't been in their life. They could be in the middle of a divorce. They could be struggling with some drinking. They could have financial stuff. Their parents could have just passed. You just never know what's going on in these situations. I am a big fan of using humor to kind of intro into these conversations, right? If you find out that's applicable, it's a nice way. It's just what I did the other day with my other buddies. It's like light jokes can kind of ease the tension. And before you know it, we had a 2 or 3 day text thing going on with my friends. And it's like, all right, good. It feels good to kind of be back there. And then last but not least, just be open and honest, right? Share some updates about your life. What's going on? Let's keep it balanced. I mean, you want to ask and genuinely, know what's going on in their life, but open up about what's going on with you and be open and honest. And again, I think reconnecting with these long-lost friends and renewing these friendships can lead to even stronger, better, deeper friendships. But you got to go into it with some understanding and an openness to know it could go a lot of different ways. And let's not force the issue as we're trying to do this and kind of, rebuild some friends. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting topic. It's not the deepest, the unlicensed counselor episode topic that we ever had, but I do think it's one that's like kind of got some take-home value, because you probably listening to this and you got 1 or 2 people in your mind and be like, okay, maybe I can just shoot them a text tonight when I'm sitting on my couch and I got a free couple minutes, and let's just see where this goes, right? And I think you'll feel better knowing that you at least tried if they're that much important and it's still running through your mind. I know it's worked in my life, and I'm looking forward to continuing this practice in 2024. So good stuff. But that's all we got for today's episode. My name is Steve Moak. I am the Unlicensed Counselor. Until next time, thank you very much.